Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Miller, Chair of the Kranick School of Physical Therapy and co-chair of Scholar Showcase. On behalf of the Scholar Showcase Committee, I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Scholar Showcase. We have an exciting program for you tonight. We want you to get the most out of this virtual experience today. So if you have a question for the speaker, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. As the moderator for tonight's program, I will receive your questions and relay them to Annetta following her presentation. Also, for those of you that are interested in LP credit, instructions will be posted soon in the chat. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, the Interim Vice President and Provost, Dr. Mary Beth Bagg.
I did it. I left it on mute. Sorry, guys. Thanks, Dr. Miller. It's my honor to join you this evening to mark the opening of the 2021 Scholar Showcase. During the next few days, we'll have the opportunity to explore an impressive array of research that represents a wide variety of disciplines at the University of Indianapolis. I am especially impressed by the number of submissions we've received this year. There are more than 270 submissions for Scholar Showcase, and this has exceeded our last mark by more than 100 submissions. Think about how amazing that is and what it says about the scholarly community at UIndy. This increased interest in academic research highlights the way the University of Indianapolis supports our students and challenges them to reach new heights. Our Scholar Showcase highlights the scholastic accomplishments of undergraduate and graduate students and faculty from all of our colleges, schools, academic units, and departments across the entire campus. From chemistry to exercise science, from music to art, you'll find valuable learning experiences and an opportunity to discover the diversity and the depth of UIndy scholarly activities. I'm really proud of the hard work and dedication represented by all of the students and the faculty participating in the Scholar Showcase this year. And I really want to thank the faculty and staff for their mentorship and guidance that made this campus-wide event possible. Scholar Showcase strengthens collaborative relationships across campus and engages UIndy scholars with our community. And as we highlight the creative ideas, innovative pursuits, and scholarly achievements during the next few days, we're celebrating all of your talents and skills, as well as building the connections that will spark fulfilling careers in the future. I hope you will actively participate in discussions and make the most out of this unbelievable opportunity for learning beyond traditional classroom experiences. Scholar Showcase is a valued tradition at UIndy, and I'm excited to see how the Scholar Showcase Committee has expanded this event to create new learning experiences this year. I'm especially excited for you tonight to hear from one of our Board of Trustee members, our guest speaker, Annetta Beauregard. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Robert Manuel, President of the University of Indianapolis.
Thanks, Mary Beth, for the introduction and for being here and being the academic leader throughout the past year. I wanted to say that the past year and a half has certainly been difficult for us all. It has stretched us in many ways. But the one thing that I'm most proud of and most inspired by, quite frankly, is that everybody at the university has found a way to keep the traditions that are so dear to us moving forward, even in a pandemic. And tonight is one of those examples. Mary Beth talked to you about the number of people participating, the number of research projects being delivered. And I'm just so inspired by the work you're all doing and the ability to showcase that as the work that's important to us, but especially during this last year. So thank you for your dedication, your creativity, and your devotion to making sure that the things that are important to our educational soul are delivered and managed throughout this year. My job tonight is to introduce you to Anetta Beauregard. She's a perfect example of a person who has committed her career to lifelong learning. She has a primary passion in the intersection of science, healthcare, and policy. And when she tells you about her job, you'll see that there's probably not a day where she isn't having to read or update or learn something new in order to be successful. Annetta is a member of our university board of trustees. She's been with us since 2019. She was born and raised in the south side of Indianapolis, and she is a UIndy alum. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology in 1994 and a Master's of Science degree in physical therapy in 1996. Annetta's first career was as a physical therapist. She practiced for nearly 5 years at what was called Wishard, now is Eskenazi Hospital, before obtaining her Master's of Business Administration from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University, and then joining Eli Lilly. She spent the past 20 years of her career in biopharmaceutical drug development and has held positions with increasing responsibility at Merck, Amgen, and Vertex Pharmaceuticals. Currently, she's Vice President of Global Regulatory Policy for Johnson & Johnson, and where Annetta advocates for science-based, innovative regulations that support patients having access to life-saving medicines in a timely manner. She leads a team of professionals who partner extensively with regulators, government and non-governmental organizations, patent groups, patient groups, academia, public-private partnerships, and trade associations for policy development and implementation. University is grateful to Annetta's to have her guidance on our board of trustees. She has been a trusted advisor to me for the past year and a half, and since she's been here since 2019. Her business acumen and her worldview have been extremely helpful as we've navigated the waters of the pandemic in the last year. And I was so excited that she accepted, given her busy schedule and all that Johnson & Johnson is doing nowadays, to be with us today to talk to us and deliver the keynote this evening. So it is my honor and my privilege to introduce you to Anetta Beauregard.
Thank you. You hear me? You can hear me okay, right? Yes. Thanks for the introduction, Rob, and thank you to Mary Beth Bagg and Stephanie Miller and Lori Boyard and the Scholar Showcase Committee for the opportunity to be here with you today. It's a real pleasure. The Scholar Showcase is such an exciting event, providing the opportunity to share the great work of the university and its many innovative scholarly pursuits. I'm really thrilled to just be a part of it. So thank you. My only regret is that we're not physically together in Indianapolis. Any excuse for me to get out of Washington, D.C. and come back to Indianapolis and especially the university is very welcomed. That's still my hometown. So as Rob said, I am here to share my journey with you and tell you a little bit about my personal and professional journey from a very proud University of Indianapolis Keynote School of Physical Therapy graduate to my current role as Rob said, I'm currently a global vice president at Johnson & Johnson. And I hope that by telling my story with you tonight, that you might take from it some helpful lessons as you embark on your own journey, or you're in the midst of your own journey, or you continue your journey. I also hope that you see the fundamental and integral role the University of Indianapolis has played in my life and in my journey, really end to end, because the university in my heart is a very special place, and I feel indebted in many ways to the university, from the top-notch faculty who not only gave me a world-class education, but also really cared and nurtured me through to the other side. And as evidenced by my talking to you this evening, the university continues to play a big part in my life, as I was honored to become, as Rob said, a member of the Board of Trustees in 2019. It's not an over-exaggeration for me to tell you that without the University of Indianapolis, I would not be where I am or who I am today. And I hope that comes through as I talk about my journey here tonight, which, by the way, it is so much easier to talk about any scientific topic for hours on end than to talk about oneself. I just want to put that out there. So bear with me as I tell my journey. Maybe I'll start by telling you about my current profession. As Rob said in the introduction, I work at Johnson & Johnson. It might be a company you've heard of lately. But all kidding aside, a few fun facts that you may not know about Johnson & Johnson. It's one of the largest companies on the planet. we have 3 business sectors: pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and consumer goods. We have nearly 140,000 employees around the world. And because of our evolution over 100+ years, our products are delivered under various brand names. So for instance, the pharmaceutical sector is known as Janssen, and the consumer sector represents hundreds of brands that I'm sure you've heard of, like Neutrogena, Listerine, Aveeno. And the medical device sector also represents dozens of brands like DePuy, Synthes. Suffice it to say that many of the hip, knee replacement parts, plates, screws, sutures, bandages that will be on or in the patients that you treat will be made by Johnson & Johnson. I only tell you that so you know the context of the size of the company, and I'll give you a little more insight into my point of view. My specific role at Johnson & Johnson is in pharmaceutical regulatory affairs. It would not be a surprise if you are asking yourself, what is regulatory affairs? So I'm just going to take a brief moment to give you the highlights. And if you think it's boring by the name, just bear with me. So for instance, when a drug development company determines that a compound has the potential to treat or prevent a disease, there's a long journey. It's typically about 10 years, and it costs over $1 billion per drug on the market to bring it to the market. The journey is long and expensive because we have to run clinical trials in order to collect the data necessary to ensure that the drug is both safe and effective for the intended population. And throughout the journey of a drug being developed, the company needs to meet the regulators' expectations. In the US, that's the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. And we have to make sure we're meeting those expectations on multiple fronts, such as, is the study set up in an optimal way to obtain the desired data? Are we collecting the data in a way that maintains the highest integrity and gives the clearest answer possible to the scientific question? Are we protecting and informing patients to the degree necessary? Do we have robust manufacturing processes in place? Et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. At the end of the day, the most important question we have to resolve with the regulator is, do the benefits of the treatment outweigh the risks? We certainly saw that last week play out in a very public media, in the public and in the media, when we were looking at the vaccine, and did the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks? So just to put that in context, this is a journey that we go through with the regulators globally for every single product and over its entire life cycle. It can be a high stakes, i.e. life-saving endeavor, as we saw last week. And so the importance of the integrity and the oversight of the process cannot be underscored. So regulatory affairs, my profession, is the organization within a drug developing company that guides the path with the regulators to ensure the company receives the approval to get treatments to patients at the end of that 10-year, $1 billion journey. So in the US, it's the FDA, and for Europe, for the 27 countries that make up the European Union, it's the European Medicines Association. Then there's a regulator for China, Japan, and essentially every country thereafter, just to give you the global landscape. So while there is some harmonization among regulators, there are important distinctions, and each that need to be navigated. Hence the importance of regulatory affairs department within a company. My team specifically focuses on regulatory policy and intelligence. Our job is to understand how each of these regulators is adapting over time and as the science advances. We look at what's new, what's impacting the regulators, what's advancing the science, and then we advise our company on how to adapt to ensure our products are developed, to ensure that our products in development are meeting the evolving standards or requirements. If this job somehow sounds like a boring process job, consider this. when the crisis of COVID started to snap into focus in early last year, every regulator on the planet started to implement changes to provide not only the flexibilities necessary to accommodate a global pandemic, but also to maintain business continuity, because the last thing anyone wanted to see was for research and development for other life-saving treatments, such as for cancer, to be adversely impacted. We were all learning and adapting in real time. It was truly one of the most amazing experiences of my 20 years. So my team, which I said covers the US, the Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America, we really played a key part in assuring we knew what the key regulatory changes were occurring, how these changes impacted our vaccine development, but also our other drug development, and were we adapting accordingly? It was no small feat, to say the least. So I can honestly say there's a reason behind the bags underneath my eyes and the gray that has developed in my hair. And I guess like the rest of us, this was all in the last 12 months, as my husband and my two daughters, who are 15 and 10, we were all locked in the house together. So it's been quite the journey. So the real question is, how did I get from being a physical therapist to the job that I just described to you? And I want to take a little moment to tell you about that. Hopefully you see some commonality in my story, and hopefully apply it to yours. So to tell you how I made that journey, I'll start at the beginning. I was, as Rob said, I'm a South Sider through and through. I was born at St. Francis Hospital. I was raised in Rosedale Hills neighborhood, which is the neighborhood at the intersection of Thompson and Keystone. It's 1.7 miles from the University of Indianapolis. I went to St. Jude Grade School and Roncalli High School. It's fair to say that I literally grew up at the University of Indianapolis. I used to ride my bike to campus and take swimming lessons as a kid in the Ruth Lilly Center. So then like many of you, I was the first in my family to go to college. Perhaps like many of you, I come from I have a single parent who was raising 4 kids. And maybe like many of you, while I had the love and support to pursue my dreams of college, there was literally no plan, no playbook, no money for getting to or through college. And when I say no plan, I literally mean no knowledge of even where to begin in this process. So I created a little slide to capture my life lessons in this journey. And my lesson number 1 to leave with you is, when there's no plan, make one. That would be, they're going to bring up a slide that has that captures these life lessons that I'd like to share with you. So when there's no plan, make one. I toured several colleges. Did the slide come up by chance? There we go. I'll keep going. So I toured several colleges, and in order to get my college paid for, I was looking at ROTC Army Scholarship for Nursing, which was a 4+4 program. You got 4 years of college paid for, and then you had to give 4 years of your life to the Army. And I was looking at in-state options. But when I toured the University of Indianapolis, honestly, it was the financial aid office and an advisor that sat down with me and helped me map out a plan for affording college. And I knew I wouldn't have the expense of room and board because I lived 1.7 miles away. And the university was ranked so highly for physical therapy, which is where I was looking. It was exactly the help I needed to basically create the plan for accomplishing my dreams. As Rob said, I pursued my bachelor's in science and psychology. And as I was taking all the prerequisites for physical therapy school, I needed a job to pay for college. And I wanted experience in physical therapy to prepare me for the highly competitive graduate school. I went through the phone book, and yes, for the millennials and the Generation Zs that may be on this call, there was this literal book that had phone numbers in it. And well, I called every physical therapy clinic, nursing home, and hospital in that book until I got to the W's. and scored a job as a physical therapy aide at Wishart Hospital, which is now Eskenazi. At the same time, I also aggressively pursued the 3+2 program. Many of you already know this, but University of Indianapolis offers juniors who have completed the bulk of their undergraduate requirements early admit to the graduate physical therapy school, saving time and money. This was the early 90s, and perhaps it's still the case, but I remember the statement being made, it was harder to get into physical therapy school than it was to medical school at the time. So the early admit was even more competitive. And I remember talking to the dean of the physical therapy school at that time, and she was trying to temper my expectations. And she said, you know, there's only one, there's basically one spot available for a qualified junior. And I remember the dialogue in my own head, and I said to myself, well, I don't need more than one slot. So it was sort of that mantra of this is going to happen. So my life lesson number 2 is that fierce and focused determination will get you exactly where you need to be. So sometimes that takes tremendous self-discipline. My advice would be, don't be afraid to put in the work. This was my freshman, sophomore, and junior years of undergraduate, and most of my friends, let's be honest, they were pledging sororities and generally partying the weekends away. And for the most part, I had to study and work. Be persistent, put in the work. And my advice would be, it will pay off in the end, and you'll have the rest of your life to enjoy it. So that's my life lesson number 2. Working as a physical therapist aide at Wishart was a tremendous experience for me. It opened my eyes to so many things, including healthcare disparities and the physical manifestations of poverty, including treating the aftermath of gang violence, drug use, and homelessness. It really and truly was a life altering experience that I'm grateful for. It was also where I met and quickly befriended a University of Indianapolis PT student named Stephanie Kelly. I hope she's on the line or listens to this later. And several of the PTs who worked at Wishart became my mentors over the years. And my life lesson number 3 would be this: no one who reaches any sort of height does it alone. Always, always seek out mentors. And that took me to PT graduate school. And what a gift that was. What a tremendous education KSPT provides. I really cannot say enough. The faculty were amazing. And I hope some of them are on the line. And I felt 100% ready for the real world when the time came. After graduation, I went back to Wishart as a physical therapist. I worked for the first few years primarily in the burn unit, and I really loved this experience because we spent a great deal of time with the patients and their families, and we worked as a very close medical team because the patients were often complex and they stayed for long periods of time, and it really took the entire family to rehab these patients back to being able to go home, and we followed them long term. After a few years, I worked, I eventually left Wishart and worked in both outpatient sports medicine as well as long-term care. It was during this time in 1997 that there was a piece of legislation passed called the Balanced Budget Act. Stephanie Miller, thank you for reminding me of the year and the name of the act. But this piece of legislation really had a profound impact on my journey, and I'll explain why. The purpose of this piece of legislation was to reduce the rapid growth in Medicare's post-acute care expenditures. Apparently, from 1989 to 1996, Medicare spending rose from 2.8 to 11.3 billion, with escalating costs and concerns about widespread variability in utilization patterns. So basically, Congress aimed to control the growth in rehabilitation services. Nearly overnight, this piece of legislation changed how we could practice PT, how we were reimbursed for PT, and frankly, the supply and the demand for PT. I was incredulous. I started doing extensive research on why. Basically, how did this happen? What recourse did we have? How was our trade association stepping in? Why was there such variability in utilization patterns? And most importantly, why was physical therapy viewed as so expendable? A degree I just spent an inordinate amount of energy and time pursuing. It really bothered me, as you as you might tell. I got involved in our trade association. I listened intently to the federal lobbyists explain what was happening in Washington, D.C. I found it infuriating that Congress was essentially dictating the practice of physical therapy. In hindsight, this was a defining event in my career. It started my lifelong passion for what is apparently my tagline, because I heard it in Rob's introduction, that is that intersection of science, healthcare, and policy. This is where my passion started. And this really was a moment for me, although I didn't realize that until many, many years later. So my life lesson number 4 is never lose sight of the big picture. Always be intellectually curious, because you never know where that will lead you. Around this time, 2 things happened for me. One, I got frustrated with the restraints on treatment options and durations and dictations, basically. And I started questioning my long-term career aspirations. So I started exploring some different paths. It was at this time that I came back to the physical therapy program at the University of Indianapolis and started teaching in the physical therapy assistant program with a young professor named Stephanie Kelly as my office neighbor, and once again, my mentor. At this time, I started pursuing my MBA, and once again, the University of Indianapolis was there for me at a pivotal moment in my life. I drew on the faculty and friends there, and they were of tremendous support. Although there was a little bit of a loss for words, because advising on transitioning out of the field of physical therapy wasn't necessarily their forte. Life lesson number 5, sometimes following your passion can be a lonesome journey. Do it anyway. I started looking at opportunities to utilize both my master's in science and my master's in business and pursue that intersection I mentioned already, science, healthcare, and policy. And I did not need to look further than my own backyard, Eli Lilly. So to get my foot in the door at Lilly, I took a job as a contractor with the hopes of 1, learning about drug development, and 2, potentially coming on as a permanent employee at Lilly. But to put it into perspective, I was 20 something. I was late 20s. I took a $20,000 pay cut for a temporary job in a field that I wasn't familiar with. So my title was Clinical Trial Project Management Technical Assistant. I was trained by the administrative assistants at Lilly. Needless to say, I had many friends and colleagues who seriously questioned my sanity about this time. So life lesson number 6, sometimes life requires you to simply take a flying leap of faith. I suggest you do it. Turns out it was the best decision of my life. Within 12 months, I was offered a full-time position at Lilly. Within 6 months after that, I was in London for a year-long assignment to run some of the largest phase 2 trials the company had ever conducted. 12 months after that, I was in regulatory affairs. The CEO of Lilly at the time, his name was Sidney Terrell, was actively working with the FDA to improve the predictability and efficiency of the US drug development system, including shaping legislation to improve funding and performance metrics for the FDA. At the time, we didn't have predictability around drug development the way that the more structured way that we do now. He was looking for full-time employees to actively engage in this new space of advocating for legislation and regulation to improve drug development so treatments were brought to patients more efficiently. I immediately recognized this opportunity as exactly fitting with my passion. There was stiff competition for this new regulatory policy position amongst several very well qualified and honestly more experienced internal candidates. I advocated for myself hard and got the position. My boss, to this day, this is nearly 20 years later, still teases me about the way that I advocated and had a relentless pursuit, not only with him, but anyone else that he knew to get this position. And so my life lesson number 7 is that there will be times when you need to hardcore advocate for yourself. Do not shy away. You never know where this will take you. And honestly, when we look at equal pay and equal rights in the workplace, this life lesson really does come into play. So I got the job. It was the best opportunity of my life. And within 12 months, I was negotiating directly with the FDA to shape legislation to support drug development. I was regularly flying on the Lilly corporate jet with the CEO to and from Washington, D.C. to prepare him and directly participate in meetings with the FDA, our trade associations, and Congress. I hope this plotline is starting to sound familiar because the thread is really common throughout my journey. I was the most junior on the jet by far, but I ensured that I was not the least knowledgeable. I really took it as a personal responsibility to be as knowledgeable as possible. See life lesson number 2. To the point, the CEO asked me to independently represent Lilly domestically and internationally. I went to Geneva to represent Lilly with the World Health Organization and DC with the FDA, the National Institutes of Health, and congressional leadership. It was a true honor and privilege. So, how did a girl from the Indy South Side make it there? I would say see life lessons 1 through 7. After 8 great years at Lilly, one of our leaders became the head of Amgen Regulatory Affairs, which at that time was the rising star in the industry for its development of biologic treatments. I had a choice. I could go to California headquarters or Washington, D.C. I chose DC primarily because I knew I'd be interacting with the FDA and Congress and trade associations, which are all headquartered in DC. That was 15 years ago. It's been an amazing journey that has literally taken me around the world. I've now worked in nearly every type of drug or biologic, from oncology to neuroscience, and now for the past 12 months, the COVID vaccine. And by the way, 12 months ago, I'd never worked on a vaccine, and I didn't understand the science of viruses the way that I understood other science. And that, again, was another one of those steep learning curves. I remember one Saturday, spending the entire Saturday learning about the effects on monkeys, because that's where we were in January of last year. I often get asked, how could a PT degree possibly apply to drug development? My answer is simple: in every single way. My University of Indianapolis PT training taught me the discipline of following the scientific method to make a patient diagnosis. It taught me how to critically think, conduct in-depth research, and articulate a detailed and well-researched position. It gave me the capacity and the confidence to articulate those positions. It helped me understand disease sequela and the empathy for the patient journey. It taught me to be intellectually curious and follow my passion. It taught me how to serve and mentor others. Most importantly, it nurtured me on a journey to maturity and professionalism. I often get asked, do you miss treating patients? My answer is, I went from treating 15 to 20 patients a day to developing a vaccine to keep millions from getting COVID-19. And that was just the last 12 months. So I'm going to pause there and hope that you get a moment to hope that it was helpful in your journey and telling you a little bit about my journey and how important the university is to me. And I hope that I leave you with a little quote there at the bottom of my slide that, I heard, you've probably all heard, but it really is true in my experience. Do what you love and you will never work a day in your life. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Annetta. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. So we'll open it up to questions from everyone online. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to relay those on to Annetta. I'll start actually with one of my questions, Anetta.
Sure.
We're waiting for questions to come in. I told you I'd have plenty.
Fire away.
So one of the things that I have found interesting in working with students over the years is that sort of reluctance to seek out a mentor,
Yeah.
and sort of being afraid to ask. So what advice would you have for students and young scholars in seeking a mentor and reaching out?
Yeah.
Reaching out for help.
I would say just do it. I can't even think of an instance over the years where someone wasn't really grateful to be a mentor. I enjoy it. I know all of the faculty enjoy it. It really is such a gratifying experience to share your knowledge and what you've learned and help someone else the way you were helped by someone else. And so I would say people generally like to mentor and share their experiences and talk about themselves and talk about their experience. And so I would say 100% seek out, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid at all. Most people would welcome that opportunity. And it can be something as formal as, periodic meetings to a phone call randomly, a 5-minute phone call randomly. And so don't overthink it either. It can be in whatever shape, whatever way or shape works for you and the person. So definitely, I mean, I have individuals I've been mentoring for many years, and it's one of the greatest experiences. So I would say do that. I even seek out, other moms who have children slightly older than mine, so I can learn from, there's no playbook for this. I need a parenting mentor every now and again. Teenage girls, my gosh.
Well, I have 2 of those myself. I understand that. All right. Well, thank you. Well, here's a question. The next question here. I think you'll be interested. This question is, what is the next thing in your career that you're going to advocate hard for? And then out of this question comes in from Dr. Beth Domholt.
Oh, Beth. Oh, Beth. So great. Oh my gosh, that's weird. Beth asking me a question. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm so excited to hear from Beth. What is the next thing we're going to advocate hardcore for? Yes. So the next thing is an exciting piece that I talked to you briefly, Stephanie, about, and I've talked with Rob and the board, which is where science is going in drug development. And it's all around the digital age, right? So the Fitbit, the Apple Watch, the sensors and wearables that we use to collect patient data. And this data is becoming more mature and more valuable in understanding the patient experience and measuring whether the side effects or effects of a drug. And so this is a huge component that I see coming forward, and really advocating for the regulatory framework that allows us to bring this science forward. This includes things like artificial intelligence algorithms and machine learning, and making sure that that we can utilize that for the future of science. So that may not be the answer you're expecting, but that is top of my mind. And this whole pandemic has shown us that, as I'm sure maybe with PT, you don't have to go to the clinic for many things. And we got really creative about ways to deliver treatment and to do research during the pandemic by using digital technology. I don't want that to go backward. I want that to move forward. And that is the next level of advocacy. Then there was also regulatory flexibilities put in place around COVID. When the whole world had a singular focus, it was amazing what we were able to accomplish. And I'd like to keep that momentum moving forward, even as the pandemic starts to become manageable.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit before, but that has my mind going too. And don't forget your friends here at UIndy, because we're certainly using a lot of that technology in our own research, and we'd love to take part in that.
Yes, that'll be my next connection with the university.
There you go. Well, this question actually comes in from your other good friend, Stephanie Kelly. And she asks how many individuals, especially women, can struggle with impostership or lack of confidence.
Mm.
Did you ever experience this, and what are your strategies for dealing with this?
That is a great question. Stephanie knows me too. So that is a great question, because Sunday evening I was saying to myself, why did I agree to do this? It's I'm not the right, I had those doubts. They start creeping in, and you have that sort of, why would anyone want to hear about my journey? And you have to have, I do self-talk, basically. I do self-talk to myself that that I'm not I'm not an imposter. I am perfectly qualified to give this talk. And I literally have it out loud in the mirror sometimes to do that. And yeah, I that's my tactic. I give myself literally out loud in the mirror sometimes pep talks that to get over that feeling. And then there's a bit of like physical posturing to say, to sort of be present and be part of that sort of stand tall, basically sit tall, stand tall when you're physically in the presence, to sort of get past that I don't know, there's probably better tactics, but those are two that work for me. Yeah.
Sounds
And then
good.
I would just say I lean on a lot of other women, because and it goes back to the mentorship, but I talk about it with other women and tactics that work for them. And then trying not to overcompensate, because you see that too, right? You see sort of that overcompensation of and you just want to be your authentic self, and yeah, and say to yourself, one of those life lessons, I do deserve to be here. I am qualified. Yeah.
Julie Gayheimer says she's so proud of you, Annetta.
All my buddies, I love it. Oh, I wish I was there in person.
And she wonders, what is your opinion of the future of science for J&J?
Yeah, it really is along these lines of the digital revolution, really. And also a big component of the future for J&J and other companies is the use of big data. So health records and medical claims forms. And as we get more sophisticated on how we are able to query that level of data and have the data be clean, so that we can utilize it to understand treatments, what worked, what didn't, and getting the quality and the bias and the reliability of that data such that we can trust it, both us and the regulators. That's going to be a huge focus. We've already been working on it for the last 10, 15 years. But that will be the future, because I think that's coming to the fore as we get more sophisticated. And then clearly COVID also shown a big light on the need for that. And it's about time and cost and efficiency as well, right? If we don't have to expose patients to placebo, and we can get the data by looking at health records, won't that be a great day, right? Because everyone deserves the treatment. So I think that's a big component for J&J moving forward.
I have to say that I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I know I have a number of our PT students online, and we just had a unit in our research class on health informatics.
Nice.
and talking about big data and how important that is moving forward. And it's not just for professions like physical therapy, but
right.
all of healthcare, and
all
that's going to be important.
All of healthcare, end to end. This whole data science wasn't even a thing when we were in college. We've been hiring so fast these incredibly smart young individuals coming out of college with a data science capability. It is a huge part of our that just wasn't there even 5 years ago. You didn't hear the word data scientist. That is we are hiring some of the best and the brightest out of school and out of consulting firms and things like that, that are consulting for healthcare overall. So that is a huge area for the future.
Well, we're finding that we know a lot of our graduates are even going into that. So they're transitioning into just, interpreting the data for their own companies and their hospital systems, and
Yes.
As an important means of moving forward and improving healthcare outcomes.
Yes. And that's why I say that the physical therapy degree is so much more than I think what we originally thought of, but the education is premier to springboard to these other things if you so desire.
Okay, so we have another question.
Yes.
This one's from Tony Morris, and she asks, I have heard a lot about epigenomics in science and healthcare. Do you see this following the digital information you just mentioned as the next advocacy topic? And thank you for sharing your story.
So I would say two things. When we look at, are you talking about gene sequencing and the utilization of the genetic code moving forward? Gene therapy, essentially?
Didn't mention any further.
Okay. Well, I'll answer it in the thing
Answers. Yes, she says yes.
Yes. Okay. So yes, I should have mentioned that also in like the future of science. Absolutely. So before coming to J&J, I was at a small biotech called Vertex. They're based out of Boston. They focus on gene therapy and rare genetic diseases. And so it's all about understanding the genetic sequences and how that manifests in disease. So specifically, Vertex has some of the only disease-altering treatments for cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease. But we know that it's a genetic disease, but what you may not know is that it can be 2,000 combinations of genetic code that can cause the disease of cystic fibrosis. So finding a treatment for that, you have to understand the differences between those 2,000 genetic codes, which is the science of the future, because the 3 treatments that we currently have for cystic fibrosis, they do just that. And so so this is quite a remarkable future field for science that is also super exciting. And honestly, I feel like there was rapid innovation around cancer in the 80s and 90s. And then it felt like we had progress for sure, particularly in cancer. But now I feel like we're at that precipice of another huge revolution in science between genetic therapy and all the things I just described. It's really turning an exciting corner, and I see that for the future. For sure. Cell and gene therapies now make up 60% of the FDA's reviews that they do. So 60% of the applications to the FDA are for genetic therapies. Yeah.
So the next question here, Ellen Miller.
Ellen was my mentor for my graduate thesis. So that's a special connection there too.
We both have that connection to Ellen then.
Yes.
All right, so what advice would you give to a young woman who wants it all? To get an advanced degree, have a meaningful career, have children, and do it all well?
Great question. I would say it's possible, but maybe not all at once or all the time. It's a journey. It's a long journey. And you got to be, well, I would say pick a good partner, pick a good support system, pick good friends, and be good to yourself. Because sometimes when you're driven like that, you can forget about yourself in that journey. And I think nowadays we're learning a lot more about the importance of taking care of yourself and others during that process. I don't believe in work-life balance. I am way out of balance sometimes, but then I think it's all about recalibrating when you know you're out of balance. So I think it's all a matter of it's all a matter of over time and perspective, and that you shouldn't aspire to it being balanced work and life all the time. But yeah, critical to find the right partner. I got married 3 weeks before I started PT graduate school. And I have to say, my husband and my family support system, the university mentors has been huge. But you have to have that on your journey. And then I would say it's definitely possible to be a working mom. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. But you got to learn what you're going to let go of. My landscaping is pathetic compared to my neighbors, and it always will be, because it is not something that I prioritize. There's just certain things. I don't make it to all the school events. My husband and I do a trade-off. You have to pick your battles, pick the things you're going to let go, because there's going to be times when you got to make that trade-off. And but it is possible. It is possible in the end. You just keep at it, and you can have it all. Might not be what you expected, but other things open up, and that's you gotta have that trade-off. I don't know. I'd welcome to hear other moms' perspectives on that, because it's not easy. It's not an easy road at all.
That's for sure. Well, I think we probably have time for another question or so. Here's one. So you mentioned the exposure to health disparities while working at Wishard, yet in many ways, eliminating those disparities has not progressed.
Right.
What strategies do you think the U.S. should pursue to address those health disparities?
Oh, wow. Big question. Good question. I think COVID has laid bare even more the disparities we see, even neighborhood to neighborhood, particularly when we look at vaccine rollout. And I think particularly COVID has shown us health literacy is a real gap in our society. And so we have such work to do. And I mean health. So there's health disparities in the delivery of healthcare, and then there's a gap in health literacy, like even understanding health, and that I think was even more of a shock when we saw like people not understanding some fundamentals about health, about vaccines and disease. I think some of the approach is we should be very, very targeted. We should learn from the lessons of the pandemic. And some of that work is ferociously underway. Things like really investing in our communities of color, and really investing in the numbers and the facts that and supporting, for instance, physicians in the Black and Brown community, and their very important role in helping with the gap in either health literacy or healthcare availability, and being extremely targeted and conscious about that, because we do have such a long way to go. We are tracking very carefully the vaccine rollout and doing very targeted patient demographics and targeting to make sure that we do get to these communities in ways that we are really going at it very, very aggressively as possible. Good question. I don't know that I wish I had a magic answer, but I can tell you that COVID has been a catalyst for a lot of good. As bad as it's been for everyone, it's been a catalyst for a lot of good for the future, I see.
So I have one last question, and I think it's a good one. I know we're getting close on time, but I thought I'd ask it. So any advice for keeping campus connections alive after graduation? This comes in from Amber Sweetland.
Oh, I say you have it a lot easier, because we didn't have Facebook, and okay, I'm really being old now. We didn't have cell phones when I graduated. So you guys have it a lot better. And I would just say, use all those avenues and do keep up, even if it's just a periodic here and there. I haven't always done the best job. And I have some regrets around that. I would say definitely, definitely keep up with because these are lifelong connections. You're all going to go through similar experiences over life and time. You're all of a similar age and you have the shared experience of the university. So I would highly recommend it. And it could lead you to great experiences like the Board of Trustees of the University of Indianapolis, which is kind of like, it's kind of like your colleagues, and keeping up and staying connected. And I just would highly recommend that because it's such good people at the University of Indianapolis with such deep experience and knowledge and a shared vision and understanding. And I don't know about tactics, but I would say I just highly encourage that. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well,
Thank
Annetta, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know how busy you've been of recent, and we just appreciate it. And I know this is an inspiration to all this new generation of scholars at University of Indianapolis. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just wish I could be there and see all the good work. And I just, hopefully there are words of encouragement because this is fantastic. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
All right.
I just want to take a minute before we close to remind everyone about Scholar Showcase presentations start tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and they will run through Thursday afternoon. You can find the full schedule of events and the Zoom links for all the sessions on our Scholar Showcase website, and I will put that in the chat here in a second. And now I would like to invite Dr. Mary Beth Bagg to make our closing remarks.
I'm going to start by apologizing. My dog Berlin is standing at the front door, which is right next to where my office is, and she's been barking recently. So if she interrupts us, it's just her saying, "Great job, Annetta. Thank you for a wonderful talk." She often comments when I'm on meetings, so and only has good barks to say about people. So I just want to thank you again for a great presentation. It was fascinating to listen to your life's journey so far, and I look forward to hearing what the next things are. I agree with you. We've learned some really important things from COVID. I hadn't really thought about some of the things you brought up, but boy, we better have learned a lot from this, because hopefully we're never going to experience this kind of event again in our lifetime. So let's learn the lessons now so we can try to avoid that in the future. I also want to take a moment to just thank the Scholar Showcase Committee for all their hard work, and especially the co-chairs of the committee, Dr. Stephanie Miller from the Keynote School of Physical Therapy and Dr. Lori Beauregard from our chemistry department. Thanks to you two ladies and to all of the committee for all the work to get this done today. Last fall, when Lori and Stephanie and I started talking about how we could bring the Scholar Showcase together for this year, we were just really trying to figure out how to bring the semester together under COVID. So to imagine where we were when we first started talking about this in the fall, to actually having all of these presentations over the next 3 days and more than 270 submissions to the Scholar Showcase, just tells me that if you put your heads together, you can do anything. And so I'm just really proud of everyone. And I encourage everyone to take some time this week, look at the schedule. There are amazing things going on in the next 3 days. You probably can't do them all, but pick a few that really interest you and pop in and see what's going on. It will really mean a lot to everybody who's worked hard on this. And how else are you going to learn about it unless you join in and hear what's going on? So thank you to everyone. And I also want to just say to all of you, thanks for joining us this evening. I'm really excited about this week. Best wishes for a successful close to the semester. And congratulations to all of our 2020 and 2021 graduates. That's coming right around the corner as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Thanks again, Annetta. It was great to see you.